Winter in the Scottish Highlands. There is no comfort in these unsparing hills. The wind is merciless, the cold cruel. For 6 months of the year, the high tops are buried in snow. Yet, even here, in dead of winter, there is life. To survive, mountain wildlife must be tough and adaptable. Food is hard to come by, and here the climate can be as hostile as any place on Earth. Few birds can withstand such bitter weather. Wearing white for winter, essential camouflage in eagle country, only the ptarmigan seems truly at home. With feathers puffed up against the cold, it scratches a living from beneath the snow. A hungry buzzard feasts on carrion. For such predators, scavenging is a way of life. Without it, neither buzzard nor eagle could survive. This, then, is the lonely world of the high tops and the wild creatures who live there, the hunted and the hunters, in the hills where eagles fly. Ice holds the land in a grip of iron. But every new day the sun edges a little higher above the hills. The hard weather cannot go on forever. Day by day, drip by drip, winter's grasp is slowly slipping. As the thaw continues, the drips become a trickle. The trickle becomes a torrent, and soon the glens echo to the roar of meltwater. This is not the end of winter, but it is the first hint of coming spring. finds the golden eagle at its nest, for the birds are resident through the winter, and the eagle's year begins early. This pair has returned to the same cliff where they bred last year. Now nest building is the most urgent task. There is no mistaking that imperious stare, or the sleek mane whose colour gives these magnificent birds their name, golden eagles. No wonder Scotland is proud of them. And with over 400 breeding pairs, the Scottish population is one of the largest and most important in Europe. The golden eagle is Britain's biggest native bird of prey. From bill to tail, it can measure up to a metre in length, and every centimetre conveys an impression of craggy strength. The wingspan exceeds the height of most tall men, enabling the eagle to sail far and wide over the huge areas of its home range with the minimum of effort. On the ground, it can appear awkward and ungainly, but flight transforms the golden eagle into a creature of matchless, soaring grace. All through February and into March, the birds are busy, a steady airlift of sticks and stems, adding to the growing pile on the cliff ledge. Over the years, if the same eyrie is used regularly, the nest can grow to a huge size. A cartload of kindling may be 4 feet high, but that depends on how much timber is available. Where pine is plentiful, the nest will be generous, but in the treeless wastes of the far north and west, it'll be a more modest affair. Foraging for heather and other material is a task which both birds share. But the bulk of the building is done by the female. Later, when the nest is nearing completion, the birds will hunt around for wood rush to line the cup in which the eggs will soon be laid. Golden eagles are conservative birds. Not only do they mate for life, but they remain faithful to their ancestral eyries. Some sites are undoubtedly centuries old, strongholds used by generations of eagles. Yet most pairs will have at least one alternative site, which they may use from time to time, while other birds may have as many as 8 or more nests within their home range. But most pairs seem to have a favourite site, and this bird has returned to hers. It is now mid-March. Already the first egg has been laid. The long, slow process of incubation has begun. The following weeks are critical for the eagles. At no other time are they so vulnerable to human disturbance. Every year, vast tracts of moorland go up in smoke. The heather is burnt deliberately to encourage new growth, tender young shoots for the grouse to feed on, and fresh grass for deer and sheep. Such fires in themselves are seldom a threat to eagle eyries, but the birds are all too easily disturbed. The dense, drifting smoke and the presence of people too close to the nest could be enough to cause them to desert. This time the fire comes close, but all is well, and there are now 2 eggs in the nest. When the smoke has dispersed, the female returns to resume the vital task of incubation. Early spring, and the sheep are brought down from the hill for the lambing. The sheep are gathered just in time, for March in the highlands can be treacherous. A shift of the wind brings a return to winter, and a new hazard for the eagles. But the birds are used to these sudden snowstorms. Unless she's buried, the female will sit tight and see the blizzard through. Yet even on the high ground, the snow cannot last forever, and the ptarmigan's changing plumage is a sure sign of warmer days to come. So the long wait continues. And as the time for hatching draws nearer, the female sits tighter than ever. By mid-April, the snow is going fast. Already the mountain hares are beginning to lose their white coats as the mountain slopes shed theirs. Everywhere, new life is appearing. For this newborn lamb, the chance of being killed by a hungry eagle is remote. A few eagles will occasionally take lambs, it is true, but the great majority are picked up as carrion, killed by disease, starvation, or even the cold, but not by eagles. 6 weeks have passed since the first egg was laid, and a special event has just taken place at the eyrie. But the eagles are not alone in producing young. The wheatear, one of the first returning migrants, also has a family to feed. Back at the eyrie, the second egg has hatched, and a desperate struggle for survival has begun. Nobody knows why this aggression takes place, but 8 times out of 10, the younger chick is killed. At this time in the life of the eyrie, it is the male that is doing all the hunting for the family. For the first 2 or 3 weeks of their lives, the female keeps a close watch on the young chicks and spends most of her time looking after them. At feeding time, she's in constant attendance, offering small titbits to the youngsters and helping herself to the larger, coarser morsels. Ptarmigan, stoat, fox cub, the male continues to bring a steady supply of food to the eyrie. The young chicks grow fast. In their first 2 weeks, their weight will have doubled, and 3 weeks after that, their birth weight will have been multiplied 32 times over. Although only a couple of days separate the two chicks, the difference in age could be crucial for the younger one. Being the firstborn is a definite advantage, and the elder chick, being heavier and stronger, is able to grab more food than its sibling. But if the weaker chick is not killed in these first 3 weeks, its chances of survival increase dramatically. For so powerful a bird, the female is a most gentle mother. With painstaking care, she curls her sharp talons so as not to injure her precious youngsters. Not all golden eagles nest on cliffs. A neighbouring pair chose a Scots pine, but already one of their chicks has died, almost certainly killed by its elder brother or sister. The pines are relics from the past, from the great wood of Caledon, the vast primeval northern forest, which once covered 3 million acres of Scotland. Today, only fragments of the old Caledonian forest remain. But wherever the native pines still thrive, there too you may find other unusual survivors. The Scottish crossbill, now classified as a distinct species in its own right, is a typical resident of the Caledonian forest. That secateurs beak is the perfect tool for the collection and wrenching apart of pine cones to get at the seeds which are the crossbill's major source of food. As the male returns with a full crop, his bright reddish colouring stands out against the greenery. Both birds feed regurgitated seeds to their hungry brood, whose appetite seems inexhaustible. Before they leave the nest, these youngsters may consume as many as 85,000 seeds. In another part of the eagle's domain, a pair of merlins have commandeered an old hooded crow's nest to raise their young. Merlins are Britain's smallest birds of prey. The male is scarcely bigger than a blackbird. Yet these fierce little falcons are more than ready to defend their nesting territory against any intruder, however powerful. As the eagle sails overhead, the merlin leaves the nest to join its mate. And together they see him off, making up in aggression what they lack in size. Only when the eagle has been driven away will the merlin return, to preen its ruffled feathers before settling down at the nest once more. Like all birds of prey, golden eagles regularly suffer the indignity of being mobbed by species smaller and less powerful than themselves. Such behavior is extremely effective in deterring a hunting predator and drawing unwelcome attention to its presence. The boldest culprits are the hooded crows. The bird they're mobbing here is an immature eagle which has strayed into the home range of the resident breeding pair. Meanwhile, the youngsters in the eyrie are getting bigger every day. The first soft coat of fluffy down has been replaced by a second, thicker layer, and they're now old enough to be left alone, though the female still remains close at hand while the male is scouring the glens for food. When eagles are hunting, the red grouse lies low. For mother and chicks, camouflage is the best defense. Only when the danger has passed does the hen lead her family from cover and begin to feed again. In Scotland, the red grouse is a famous sporting bird. Grouse shooting is big business, and some keepers do not take kindly to seeing their precious birds ending up as food for eagles. But careful research has proved beyond doubt that the taking of grouse by golden eagles does not affect the sportsman's bag. In a normal year, there are more than enough grouse for both the eagles and the guns. When grouse numbers are low, this is the result of bad weather or other factors and has nothing to do with predators. It is now 7 weeks since the hatch. Somehow, against the odds, the younger eaglet has managed to survive those first critical days and is growing as lustily as his brother. Both youngsters are beginning to look like young eagles. Already the first feathers are sprouting through their coats of down. When prey is brought to the nest, they can feed themselves, and the female no longer needs to spend so much time with them. Bones and other indigestible bits are removed by the female. Otherwise, the youngsters might choke. But the time when they can join their parents in the air is still a long way off. Even though the eaglets are now more than half grown, the parents still bring sprigs of green pine to embellish the nest. Why they do so is a mystery. Perhaps the fresh greenery helps to cover up the telltale remains of earlier kills. As spring turns to summer, another source of food appears, when the red deer produce their calves. Marauding eagles hold no fear for this adult hind. But for newborn calves, it's another matter. Left unguarded even for a little while, they are at risk. Hidden in the heather, they may be safe, but as soon as they move, they are easy meat unless their mothers return. For the eagle's world is a harsh one. There is no room for sentiment in these hungry hills. Yet when summer comes, even the wildest mountain can become a place of unexpected beauty. High summer, and a hen harrier sails past on an endless hunt for food. Like the golden eagles whose uplands they share, the harriers also have a family, but they have 4 mouths to feed. "40 years ago, this would have been a rare sight indeed. Driven from the mainland by egg thieves and grouse-moor keepers, the birds clung on only in Orkney and the Hebrides. But fewer keepers and more young conifer plantations have enabled the hen harrier to recolonize many of its former haunts. hen harriers are ground nesting birds, and this female has chosen a typical site in deep heather to raise her brood. With twice as many young as the neighbouring eagles, competition for food is fierce, and when family squabbles break out, the nest becomes a roughhouse, with no holds barred. The difference in age between these two youngsters is quite marked, yet despite their rivalries, few nestlings are killed. The young harriers grow fast. Soon, when they're just over a month old, they will make their first flight. For the young eagles, too, the time has come when they must leave the eyrie, which has been their home and their refuge for the past 10 weeks. For a month now, the female has taken to rejoining her mate on his daily hunting forays, leaving the eaglets to their own devices. The female watches from a nearby tree as the youngsters become more adventurous. At this stage, the older of the two seems the more vigorous. Wing flapping toughens the muscles for the moment of truth, which is now very close. A few more flaps, and he's away. On the ground, the youngster has the shuffling gait of an old man. He won't take off again for a while. Within a few weeks, he'll be flying strongly with his parents. But wherever he goes, they will continue to bring food for another 2 or 3 months. Meanwhile, the second eaglet has yet to fly. The parents seem anxious and stay close, as if they can sense what is about to happen. Another first flight is completed, and the eyrie, for so long the center of the eagle's world, is empty, and summer moves on. The peaty waters of the hill lochans echo to the strange cries of red-throated divers. Here, long after the young eagles have flown, the divers are still awaiting the arrival of their young. In the glens, the heather blooms, signaling the end of summer, and the two young eagles are now aloft for longer periods, as if reveling in the sheer joy of flight. September finds them still together, and they'll remain with their parents well into the winter, seeking to perfect their skills as hunters and masters of the skies. Autumn comes with a clatter of hooves as the deer stalkers head for the hills. Deer stalking, like grouse shooting, is important to Scotland. But why not leave the deer in peace? One answer is that with over 200,000 red deer roaming the highlands, their numbers must be controlled in order to maintain a healthy population. Selective shooting with a high-powered rifle is probably the most humane way of doing the job. Stalking also brings a rich, if gruesome, harvest for the eagle. Every stag that falls to the guns will be opened up, and the gralloch, the beast's entrails, left on the hill for the scavengers. The snow returns. The days grow shorter. The year has turned full circle. Once more, the falls are freezing fast, as if the summer had never been. The deer go hungry, and hills where wild orchids bloomed are fit only for snow buntings. Now hunting is harder for the predators. In the lean, cold months to come, every day will be a treadmill of endless patrolling in search of prey. But the eagle's patience is infinite. This time he misses. But there'll be other kills, other feasts, and as the freeze continues, no shortage of carrion. In winter, scavenging is a way of life. Dead animals like this red deer calf may provide the eagle with up to 40% of its diet. But a reliance on carrion renders the eagle especially vulnerable to those who still regard all birds of prey as vermin. Old attitudes are slow to change, and a carcass laced with poison will kill an eagle just as surely as a bullet. It is, of course, against the law, but poisoned baits are still put out, and eagles continue to die. A sad end for a splendid bird. At a time when wilderness is everywhere in retreat, it's reassuring to know that even in Britain there are still wild places in the high corries and the great sad hills where eagles fly. Today, we need such places more than ever. It would be an emptier world without the presence of this indomitable bird.
For centuries, British birds of prey have been persecuted, blamed for harassing game birds and domestic poultry. One species was even named after its reputation for chasing chickens, the hen harrier, much maligned and misunderstood. It is one of our least known but most vulnerable birds of prey. The plumage of the owl-like female contrasts sharply with the tailored grey neatness of her mate. The difference between the male blue hawk and female ringtail was destined to confuse naturalists for hundreds of years. Few could believe that the two birds were of the same species. Traditional farming meant that grain was spilt and wasted. The small seed-eating birds in which hen harriers thrived were abundant. Last century, pairs of harriers were a common sight, even in southern counties. But guns were often raised at this unpopular predator. Both persecution and changes in the countryside caused the harriers to disappear. They became a rare sight south of Scotland. By the First World War, the species only nested in the most remote parts of Britain. As the nation's guns were trained in different sites, the fortunes of the hen harrier improved. Two world wars had increased the nation's demand for timber. A post-war forestry boom gave the harriers a perfect opportunity to expand their nesting grounds. Often persecuted on open moorland, conifer plantations allowed them to breed undisturbed. Although still uncommon, harriers now nest at a number of mainland sites. The timber boom is over, but the uplands are still covered with a patchwork of conifer plantations. Typically a bird of exposed moorlands, hen harriers still thrive in these forests. Young conifer plantations are ideal harrier hunting grounds. Voles and meadow pipits are all plentiful. Long-legged and clumsy on the ground, once in the air, the hen harrier is a master of aerial maneuvers. In this bird, swiftness and agility are perfectly combined. Prey may be caught unawares with the surprising speed of an attack. In Britain today, it is the forest nesting harriers that raise their young most successfully. Commercial forests take nearly 40 years to mature. Many post-war plantations are now ready for processing. As old trees are felled and stripped, the forests are continually replaced, but no one can be sure how suitable the new plantations will be. for hen harriers or their prey. Still at risk when nesting on open moors, forest sites remain vital for breeding harriers. The demand for timber gave the hen harrier a chance to breed again on mainland Britain. This opportunity, so recently gained, might easily be lost. The hen harrier is found throughout the Northern Hemisphere. In autumn, British harriers disperse from their nesting grounds. Many head west for Ireland or to northern France. Colder winters drive Scandinavian hen harriers south to join those that remain here during the winter months. The birds are regularly seen hunting through the fields of northern Britain and East Anglia. Like all raptors, hen harriers rarely receive a warm welcome from other birds, but a female is not easily deterred from her early morning mission. Distance presents no problem to a strong winged harrier. Birds will fly 20 miles from the roost, patrolling hedgerows, woods and fields. Wintering finches seek safety in numbers as they flock together. They may feed in the same field for weeks, picking among the weeds and beet tops. Harriers make regular hunting trips, searching the same fields in the hope of a lucky strike. The slightly larger females are capable of killing young game birds and rabbits, but a fully grown pheasant would really be quite safe. A vixen's bark in neighbouring woodland overrides the peace of a winter's afternoon. These waterlogged reeds conceal trampled beds of vegetation where harriers roost in safety, away from foxes and other predators. Solitary hunters, hen harriers often roost together. In the hour before sunset, individual birds stream back towards the reeds. As if by sleight of hand, birds already settled are displaced by late arrivals. During the time of their decline, such gatherings were rarely seen. Today, roost numbers fluctuate throughout the winter. Sometimes 30 birds have been seen at one location. When stronger winds are gusting, the harriers demonstrate their sheer exuberance with flight, stalling and diving in a timeless pageant before finally dropping down to roost. The Hebridean island of Islay, close to the west coast of Scotland. Islay is best known for its whisky and flocks of wintering wildfowl. Barnacle geese mow their way across a field on the RSPB reserve, ignoring the daffodils that were once cultivated here. Year-round, the reserve provides refuge for hen harriers as well as water birds. Rabbits are the main source of food for the female harriers that overwinter in Islay. Successful hunting now will ensure the female reaches peak breeding condition by spring. Patrolling the field edge where the rushes end is a favourite hunting strategy. Success will only come if she can snatch at a young or unwary rabbit. By early March, spring has begun to change the character of the island. The first geese depart for Iceland, a staging post on their long onward flight to Greenland. Roe deer seek for new growth amongst the winter-dried heather as the first pairs of breeding harriers return, circling high over the moor to make a preliminary inspection. A hint of unsettled weather and the birds disappear. A bad spring can disrupt their aerobatic courtship routines. On the first fine day, the female drifts in the air, displaying her bright ringed tail. It is time to re-establish old partnerships. Male hen harriers often support more than one female. He may already have another partner, but by playfully mirroring her in flight, he shows that he is still interested. Eventually the birds part, and she settles to watch the early stages of his undulating display flight. She waits as his performance moves on to another stage. Drifting low over the heather, fluttering his delicate wings, he marks a potential nesting site. But this is only a warm-up routine. The real Skydance spectacular is yet to begin. There is no regular pattern to this frenzied dance, no adequate explanation for the elaborate turns as the male corkscrews through the air. His grey body glints in the sun as he repeats his reckless performance across the moor. With one female already settled, his dance may attract more birds to join his harem. Females too will skydance when competition for males is fierce, although their courtly performance is often more sedate. Before the nest is finally built, the female waits to follow her partner's lead. Giving chase, she begs him to release his nuptial offering. The meadow pipit's own nest preparations seem uncomfortably close to the displaying harriers. The male lands with his offering, but he has no intention of feeding, certain to have lured the female to his chosen nest site. By the time the harrier is on eggs, most lapwing chicks will have hatched. There will be plenty of young waders to keep the harriers well supplied. Close to the nest site, the female still solicits further attention from her partner. The pair will mate on many occasions before she begins her month-long incubation of the eggs. Moorland blooms are more subtle than spring flowers elsewhere, but the season is still vibrant. Fortunately plentiful, meadow pipits are the mainstay of the harrier's diet. As Britain's most numerous upland bird, the busy parents can raise 2 successful broods each summer. Making only short excursions, the female collects nearby heather stems to add to her nest of trampled vegetation. More familiar as a marshland species, the curlew is also an upland breeding bird. Young curlew chicks are important to the harrier's varied diet. By late May, the first egg has been laid. Others will follow at 2 to 4 day intervals. Fussing around the nest, the female prepares herself for the month-long sit-in as she continues to line the nest with softer grasses. Once laying has begun, the male's hunting luck must increase. To breed successfully, he must supply all his female's demands. At least 4 times a day, the male must return with food. He glides towards the nest, enticing the female to meet him in the air. The food pass is an extravagant alternative to delivering the prey directly to the ground. For him to land would only reveal the nest's exact location. One of the 5 eggs has already begun to hatch, but it will be over a week before all the chicks have emerged. The male's alarm calls are not enough to persuade her off the nest. A buzzard, high overhead, presents no real threat to the hen harriers. Nonetheless, its presence must be deterred. Confident that the male will deal with the intruder, she remains over the eggs. Although smaller than the buzzard, the male pursues his attack with vigor until the larger bird is driven away. The first egg may hatch 10 days before the last chick chips its way into the world. With the tiny white egg tooth still visible on the top of the bill, the chicks are unable to feed themselves. Until their talons are strong enough to grasp the meat, the female plucks the prey and feeds them tiny morsels. The male hunts well away from the nest, quartering the grassland around a deserted cottage. His quarry identified, he stalls and dives into the vegetation to snatch the prey. At a distance, the outcome of the hunt may not be revealed until he rises, a vole or bird clasped in outstretched talons. The low-level food pass is swift and urgent. His bright plumage might attract unwelcome attention while the chicks are young. Coasting low to investigate, the young golden eagle has been attracted by the harrier's activity. The female is vigorous in her defense of the nest. No predator is too big for her to take on. She circles to make sure that danger is over before returning to the nest. Only a week old, the chicks have gained weight, and the cere around the bill is turning to a greenish yellow. The fourth egg failed to hatch. The obvious difference between the chick's size shows how rapidly the young develop. The youngest lunges as aggressively as the other three, but inevitably its share of the food will be less. At this stage, one of the biggest threats to the chicks is bad weather. Their rabbit grey down is not effective at protecting them from the rain and chill. Although all 4 chicks can barely snuggle beneath her wings, the female does her best to shelter them. It's unlikely that the male will be hunting during the rain. All the hen can do is to sit tight. Any undigested bone and feathers must be removed from the nest. Waste would only attract predators. Successful breeders on islands and reserves, the high moors of the north are the natural nesting grounds of the hen harrier. At 2 weeks, feathers begin to replace the down. In daylight hours, both parents now must hunt to supply the chick's insatiable appetite. But the haste of the male's food drop leaves them exposed and vulnerable to predators. As they lose their down, the young harriers develop the female's brown camouflaged plumage. Any males in the brood will not turn grey until their first summer molt. Feet can be helpful when competing for food. As long as they're your own. As fledging approaches, the young spend more time out of the nest. The dense vegetation provides shade and protection, although they are quick to respond to the adult's return with food. With down still covering the youngest chick's head, the oldest takes its first flight away from the nest. For at least 5,000 years, hen harriers have shared their moorland existence with red grouse. Grouse thrive by eating moorland shrubs and heather, but they are prone to parasites and disease. A bad grouse year may have serious economic repercussions in the uplands. The glorious 12th. From mid-August until December, high prices are paid by those wishing to test both eye and aim with a day on the moors. Grouse shooting became popular last century when landowners realized that grouse numbers could be increased by intensive moorland management. To ensure a large bag, keepers were encouraged to eradicate all predators, including birds of prey. Dogs are quick to retrieve a bagged bird. But the dogs are not the only ones to bring back a kill. Hen harriers do take red grouse, usually those that are young or sick. It is prey that still brings the hen harrier into conflict with those who wish to spare every grouse for the sportsman's guns. Conspicuous as they fly up from the nest, female harriers are easy targets. Once the female is dead, her chicks may often be destroyed. The sun quickly dries wet feathers as the young rest on the heather tops. But a short, sharp storm can still kill weaker chicks, even at this late stage. Once dead, the youngest has provided extra food for its siblings. Soon the parents' relentless spring task of provisioning the young will be over, as the fledglings leave the vicinity of the nest. In the first year, many harriers die, both from natural and, regrettably, human causes. But those that know the hen harrier in flight can only consider it with awe. Its complete mastery of the air continues to amaze as the birds perform their annual sky dance over northern moors.